I recently sat down to finally start implementing PLM for my own business. I'd implemented these systems inside global corporations, but doing it for myself in my own environment was different. I expected to hit the ground running. Instead, I hit a wall. I couldn't even find the on switch. Literally. The button said access, but the link said no. If you're at that stage where you've bought the seats, but you're staring at a blank screen, wondering why you feel like you're failing already, this episode is for you. We're not going to talk about menus today. We're going to talk about the map you actually need to survive the first 48 hours of PLM. The biggest mistake people make, and I almost made it too, is thinking PLM starts with a CAD file. It doesn't. PLM starts with identity, who you are as a business, and how you operate. In the deep dive session I recorded for this channel, you can watch me struggle to realize that the system is a blank slate. It doesn't know what a part is to you. It doesn't know how you number things. Now, this mirrors a lot of what teams experience early on. According to Tech Clarity's PLM Best Practices survey, over 60% of manufacturers say their biggest PLM challenges are process definition and organizational alignment, not software capability. So, before you upload a single assembly, you have to answer these 3 questions. How do we identify a thing? What state is that thing in? And who is allowed to change it? SimData notes in its PLM market analysis that PLM systems encode process assumptions that must be intentionally adopted, not discovered organically. If you skip these questions and just start, you aren't building a system of record. You're building a digital version of the ambiguity you already have. Or in other words, a digital junk drawer. So where do you actually start? After an hour of in real life trial and error, 3 things became clear. Not features, not buttons, 3 pillars. What worked was not starting with parts, files, or bombs. What worked was stepping back and asking a more basic question. Why does this work exist in the first place? In my case, spending time in the area of the system that defines ideas, requests, new product initiatives changed how everything downstream felt. It anchored engineering in intent, not just geometry. That matters because PLM is fundamentally a business system that happens to manage engineering data, not the other way around. When you start with business context, the rest of the structure has something meaningful to attach to. The second pillar was understanding and accepting the difference between a file and an item. A file is geometry. An item is a business record. That record carries identity, revision history, supplier context, cost, lifecycle state, and more. In my session, nothing really made sense until that distinction clicked. Once I treated items as the system of record and files as inputs to that record, everything else became easier to reason about. This is where PLM shifts from storing data to tracking decisions. The third pillar wasn't configuration at all. It was access. If you can't easily find the system, you won't use the system. And if experienced users struggle to navigate entry points, new users won't persist. What worked for me was identifying the most direct, least friction path into PLM and using that consistently. Not the correct path, the usable path. This isn't about shortcuts. It's about respecting how people actually work. Adoption doesn't start with training. It starts with discoverability. What's interesting is that this also aligns with how analysts at SimData describe successful PLM implementations. They have product definition and structure, they have ownership and lifecycle control, and they have user access and participation before layering on advanced workflows or automation. That ordering matters. It reinforces the same pattern I experienced firsthand. Business context creates purpose, item logic creates structure, and access determines adoption. None of those require heavy automation or perfect workflows. They require clarity. Speaking of discoverability, it's time for a segment I call What the Buck? What the buck were they thinking with the onboarding experience? I spent way too much time in a recursive loop of screens just trying to find my own tenant. As I mentioned earlier, discoverability is the first hurdle of adoption. So, if you're leading the implementation effort, your job isn't just to purchase the software. Your job is to make sure your team doesn't have the same experience I had. If the on switch is hidden behind 3 layers of account management, your team will go back to using Excel before lunch. So make sure you fix the friction before you invite the team so they're not left saying, "What the buck?" Here's the roadmap I'd recommend now, based on experience and evidence. Step 1. Before touching software, make your identification logic explicit. Simple is fine, ambiguous is not. Step 2. Introduce just enough structure to support that identity. In my case, starting from the out-of-the-box templates helped anchor engineering work in intent, not just geometry. Step 3, connect one thing end to end. One file, one item, one change. Validate the loop before scaling. Notice that only one of those steps is really about software. The rest is about clarity. PLM doesn't create discipline. It reveals whether you already have it. If you want to see the unedited 60-minute train wreck of me figuring this out, the size, the clicks, the actual menu paths I took, check out the deep dive session 1 video on the playlist right here on this channel. It's for the practitioners who want to see the dirt. Next episode, we'll dive into the great debate of part numbering and decide which area to prioritize next. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the weeds.